So we're excited to be here to talk to you about the future of work. And as I mentioned, we've got some luminary panels here that bring really a unique perspective. And clearly, when you say the future of work, it means many different things. In fact, if you do a Google search, you're going to get 236 million hits. So I don't think we're going to be able to cover all of that today. So what we're going to do with our panelist expertise, we're going to focus on two fundamental shifts that are happening in society that are particularly relevant to a room full of social innovators from the private sector, civil society, and government. And I want to delve into our panelists' expertise. So I'm going to power through 3 slides really quickly to set the context for what we're going to talk about today. So clearly, as we talk about the future of work, the fundamental disruption is technology. We know that, but I want to share kind of the magnitude of that because it makes your heart stop a little bit. So we now have artificial intelligence. So in the past, machines actually needed us to learn, and now machines can do that on their own. And so then you couple artificial intelligence with robotics. So now you have machines that can learn, and the new robotics of the future are mobile. They can walk, they can talk, they can run. So us as human beings can be replaced by machines that can think more quickly, more adaptive, and potentially have the physical capabilities that we don't have. And then the third shift is ubiquitous connectivity. Every single one of us in the room and many around the world have access 24/7 to a computer in our hand. And what that means is it's disrupting the role of employer and employee. It's disrupting the way we're going to work, how we're going to work, and the jobs of the future. So Kevin Kelly, the founder of Wired, wrote a book, The Inevitable. I encourage you to all read it, and estimates by the end of this century, 70% of our jobs will be replaced by technology. So look to the person to your left, and look to the person to your right, and their jobs are either going away or yours. So we have, yay! So you can look at that as a big challenge, or we know, but the thing that is different, we know that is coming. So we have the opportunity to have solutions to that problem. So, the jobs of the future, big shift 1. Jobs of the future are going to require technology skills. Just today, you have 4 million jobs in science and technology. Just in the tech sector alone, over 263,000 jobs that are worth wages of $21 billion. Yay! Oh, you look at the other side, in the last 2 decades, technology hasn't done much to address the rising income inequality. And now we have this movement of AI and robotics. So do we want to see that continuation of shift of inequality? It's not good for the poor, it's not good for the middle class, and it's actually not good for the wealthy. So what choices are we going to make today for those jobs of the future to address that rising inequality? The second shift, which I think gets less front page news, is the rise of independent workers and on-demand workers and contract workers that are working for Uber and TaskRabbit and those millions. The challenge that we're facing with that rise that has many opportunities about flexibility and creativity, our structure has been based on a social net contract based between employers and employees, and it works really well. I get my health insurance through my employee. I get a retirement aspect through that, workers' comp. You don't think about it as much. But right now, today, we have 25% of independent workers. They don't have access to what we get through employers. And that's expected to rise to 33 to 50% by 2020. 50% of people without a social safety net. What does that mean for society, and what does that mean for the competitiveness of the workforce? So with those 2 shifts, digital economy, rising inequality, opportunity to keep this safety net that has helped make this country great and help, keep us healthy and safe, we're going to look to our panelists for those solutions. So we can get rid of my slides now, because they didn't want me to use them. So Rose, let me turn to you. So Verizon does a lot of work with underserved populations around technology. Can you share with this audience what you're specifically doing to help solve that digital challenge?
So I think we have to put the whole conversation in context, right? I mean, I would just ask you guys this question very quickly just to bridge it, is how many of you believe that you grew up without a safety net? You are very fortunate because you're not raising your hands. We exist in a place and a time where there is a large percentage of people in this country who have never had a safety net. And when you think about sort of our obligation at Verizon, it is all about those populations who have never had a safety net. So the work that we're doing and the emphasis of dealing with income inequality, of addressing the digital divide, of making sure that we are training a generation of young people to understand artificial intelligence and robotics and how to apply it and how to take what for them has always been a lifestyle of having to live with a side hustle and make that a reality is the work that we do and that we call Verizon Innovative Learning. It's giving free access, free technology, and an immersive hands-on learning curriculum in the most underserved communities across the nation. And when I say underserved, I'm talking communities where greater than 60 to 70 to 80% of children are on free and reduced lunch, where you walk into a classroom and 40% of these kids have special needs. And therefore, there is 3 to 4 to 5 aides helping these kids just get through the day. And our belief is that if we can solve the income inequality in those populations, we can solve it anywhere. So that's how we realistically and appropriately and with passion and with commitment address those issues.
Yeah. So can you share some of what you've learned by doing that deep work as a corporation for others in this room, both from business and civil society, of how they can get engaged? What can they do? What are some of the lessons you've learned to share?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons we've learned is how to involve the parent in the process, right? I mean, I think even the most simple thing of how do I get this fully loaded, connected device, the top of the line device, with 24/7 access that this child can have for 2 to 3 years, courtesy of Verizon, and a curriculum that goes along with that. How do I just get the device in the child's hand? Because it is not as simple as take it to the school, they give it to the child, and all is well. The parents have to be committed to that device. And so we have to learn how to show up differently, which means that we show up on Saturdays, so that the family can come and bring however many other people they need to bring in order to take the kids through what's really for them a fun technology fair, but it's a process so that the parent can actually sign for that device. So we had to learn that. We had to learn to show up differently. I had to hire differently. So when you look at my team of people, there are individuals who were in the public school systems. And so they are very astute and aware of what schools need because they came from public schools. I had to hire people who profiled like the people we're talking to, right? So that people don't feel like there is some corporate savior showing up to try to help me, but it's people who understand the struggle and they understand the issue and they're very authentic. I had to hire STEM professionals. So if I'm talking about, hey, you might want to have a STEM career, that person is herself an engineer, and by the way, she's an immigrant engineer. And so those things are important in terms of learning that to be relevant, you have to be authentic. And you have to change your whole go-to-market model in order to make that happen. And then we have to learn how to measure. And so there's a PhD statistician on my team who actually measures the impact of everything. And we had to learn sort of how to build out those systems. The one area that we're still learning, and I think a lot of you in the room can be helpful, is how do we build different partnerships? We bring the whole ecosystem of Verizon into this work. So when you talk about procurement and all the different departments at Verizon, it's an entire ecosystem of support to be able to get us out into the marketplace. And we have great partners, but we're now beginning to think about community-based work, so we want to bring even more partnerships into it, and we have to learn how to do that.
That's great, thank you. So Pam, I know at Haas that you've had a collaborative working on addressing, trying to get at the forefront of this safety net, and it's a diverse group of people. Can you share what are some of the ideas that are rising to the top that could be real solutions right now?
I'm glad to. So Haas Senior Fund, small family foundation, about 65 years old, in San Francisco, which happens to be the epicenter of the so-called gig economy, independent economy, 1099 economy. It's got a lot of different names, but all of what it means is there are a tremendous number of people who are now disassociated with that whole set of employer benefits that you have, and I have. And that has been part of the American fabric, part of the contract between employers and employees since the mid-century. So this is changing, and the question that we brought to the table, and then brought a whole bunch of folks to that table, is what's the impact, particularly on working families and low-wage workers? So we know there are a number of independent workers who, highly skilled professionals, working in a way they want to work with a lot of flexibility, hopefully are putting money aside in their SEP IRAs and have created a safety net for themselves. Although, let me say, from the lowest wage to the highest wage, if you are independent, there is a vulnerability that you have and your family has that employees do not. And be clear about that one big accident, one big medical emergency, one loss of your main contractor can throw your whole family into disarray and into poverty. Our focus at Haas Senior, there are many Haas foundations. They all come from Levi Strauss family, and even though I've been with Haas Senior for 15 years, I still get confused. But at Haas Senior, we do a lot of work around asset and workforce. And so our concern is what is the particular impact on low-wage workers, figuring out how to navigate this new world of platform-based, as well as those folks who've been disassociated from employer benefits forever and statutorily, like domestic workers and day laborers and some farm workers. So we wanted to make sure that if there were solutions to provide increased safety net for these independent workers, that it included the old gig workers and the new age gig workers. And we've brought a cross-sector table together to develop essentially a platform to see how we can deliver in California first, portable benefits. So a package of benefits that can move, doesn't matter who you work for, follows the person, the individual, not the employer, that is, has a number of different characteristics. In California, what we're looking at creating is an independent entity called a workers' guild. So workers' voice in this, making sure this is driven by what workers really want, not what other people think they might want, but an independent entity that would work between government, the businesses, the private sector, and labor, and the workers to figure out how do we deliver benefits to workers in a timely and responsible way that creates a set of benefits that are important to workers and that provide, in fact, a safety net.
That's great. Clearly, the safety net issue is not, we all know around the digital divide more, it gets front page news. So Pam, with this safety net that's just this emerging piece, what do you think needs to be done to get that more on the radar of our policy leaders, our business leaders, our civil society leaders?
Honestly, I think it's going to be put on our radar whether you want to or not. And it comes from two directions. When you think about our safety net, there is the employer piece for folks who've been in the labor force and have good jobs and benefits. There's also the public sector piece, that unemployment insurance, Social Security, Medicaid and Medicare. I mean, there are a number of things that even recipients of those services don't identify those as public benefits. We are in an era in which we have more and more workers who don't have benefits through their employer because they don't have an employer of record, or they're working part-time in a lot of different jobs and therefore aren't getting benefits. And we are entering a period, if you look at the proposed federal budget, in which the public safety net benefits are being drastically cut back. Food access, food stamps, Medicaid, job training, across the board, all these things that frankly we have taken for granted for 30, 40, 50 years are in danger of being whittled away. And that's going to put it on our agenda.
Yeah, and I would add to that we're seeing the same when you look at the budget in terms of sort of what's happening in the education space, yes, and what's happening with the whole sort of curriculum and move toward, getting to, digital equality inside of schools. And so that has a huge impact, right, on the future of what is that workforce that we're training, and what does that mean to the future of work and the future of the skill sets that kids can bring into some type of workforce. And so all of us should be concerned, period, across all those components.
Yeah. What role, because we all agree kind of the public sector around this digital education piece is the core scale driver. What role can corporations play to either incentivize or push or nudge to help that education system innovate? And have you seen some shining examples?
So I think the first thing that we have to do is get the federal government to change its policies around how companies are allowed to show up in schools and innovate, right? I mean, I sit in the space of a technology company who is flat out prohibited from giving my devices and my technology directly to a school. Flat out cannot do it, right? Now, Apple can or Samsung can because they're regulated differently. And so we work through that, right? And we work through that with partners and other ways to make it happen. But if you think about that conversation that preceded us that says, corporations should use their assets in order to help change society, well, hello. We think about that every single day, right? And I think that challenge is right, but I think that there is regulation and there are issues that stand in the way of our doing that. And so first of all, we believe very strongly that we have to advocate for that change. Because by changing what are really antiquated laws that are driving not a digital economy that you're talking about, but a very traditional workforce economy becomes problematic. And so we have to be honest about that. We have to change that. You have to join us in advocating for that change. And then we have to be very thoughtful about the partnerships that we build that allow us to work around that. And we are damn swift at building the partnerships and working around it.
That's great. Good. This time
I'm
goes...
sorry. It's a polite crowd. We are appropriately swift.
No. Social innovators are not a corporate crowd, right? Like, we're bold, we all push the boundaries, we think a little bit out of the box, and as Carly would say, I think we're all somewhat courageous in challenging the status quo, which is what's going to be necessary to address these two pieces. So we've got about a minute left to wrap up. So I'd like each of you to kind of, what are your closing comments to this group around these issues? And just to also just highlight where you see maybe optimism around working at that intersection of policy, policy and government, civil society, and business.
I'm somebody that started as a community organizer, then went into local government, and now in philanthropy. And the one thing, any takeaways, is we cannot address any big problem seriously without all sectors being engaged. So the corporate sector needs to be at the table, needs to see it, as you all do, in your interest, not just for your bottom line, but a part of the larger social system that we all live within. The government has to figure out what its right role is in a period in which it is being buffeted, in which public schools aren't even being called public schools by this administration, but government schools, which is a whole different phenomena. And then I would say from philanthropy and from the nonprofit sector, we have to rise up. We have to get out of our lanes. We have to get out of our silos. We have to work together in very different ways.
Yep. Yeah, so I'll be very quick. I mean, I think underneath our Verizon Innovative Learning, we have this rallying cry, which is we need more. And we need more kids to see the world of possibilities. I think in order to enable that, we need more partnerships and more people who come along sort of in that process to partner with us across that ecosystem, to change what needs to be changed, to be very deliberate in going after the most underserved populations, and to be willing to go the distance with those populations so that we can impact change, put people into the digital economy, and address your issue of income inequality.
So my last comment on this, I would say each and every one of you has a voice. So these are big problems. We need to face the truth. But when you're in meetings, they might be small, they might be, and you know these issues, you have a voice to raise it with your companies. You have a voice to raise this at a dinner party. And it's when we can mobilize the individuals, because you know what? We the people. So I just encourage you to learn everything you can today and these past 2 days, and know that it's actually at the end of the day, it's your voice that matters. So thank you.
Thank you.